So good morning for another Saturday, and we're going to be going off to Expo 67. Don, I'm going to promote you here. If you can take over the co-host duties. Last week, or 2 weeks ago when we last did this, I showed a couple movies, and I ended, I think, with one from Expo 67. I'm going to start with that same one again today in case there's folks that were not here then. But basically, these are all 8mm films. Super 8 was just coming out around this time, but we're still dealing with primarily with Super 8 films. Most of the ones I have so far have been the little short 50-foot reels. They were in about 4 minutes. I have one reel of film we're going to put together here, which I was real excited to do because it was 4 reels of 50-foot film. And it turned out it's film from hell. If anybody knows my hate of like Agfa products, well, this was Ansco Chrome movies. And Ansco Chrome is Latin for film created by the devil. I mean, it's purple, faded, nasty. And then the first reel of it was totally overexposed and was just them driving to Expo. And then the last one was totally overexposed driving home from Expo. So when we get to that reel, and the colors are really shot, but then that made it up for the next one I came by, which was really great colors and a lot of fun. What we're going to see today, we're running just about an hour's worth of video. And I'm sitting here working on more Expo 67 films. So for those that like it, I've got another easy hour or so coming up. So let me come up here to start the first one. And let me just 1 second here. I'm going to put everybody on mute here just for a second. There we go. And let me share a screen. Okay, optimize the video clip. And share. Okay. So this is the one we did last week. Oh, let me turn the sound down on it since we're not sharing. So for those that saw it before, sorry, we get a rerun. For those that is new, again, the 8mm films are sometimes kind of tough to work with. They were made on a very dense film stock. Basically, they had to be able to stand up to the incredible heat that most home projectors would put out. So you'd fire up this thing, and God forbid your film broke or anything, because while you were trying to get to the projector, it could melt it right in the film gate. But it makes it kind of interesting at times to try to capture the right mixture of the blacks in the film, the white of, say, these people's shirts, not let the light of the dome behind it burn itself out. So this particular reel, we start mostly with the USA Pavilion, Expo 67. If you've not been there, you can still go there today. It's known as the Biosphere. It has several of these large observation decks that are up on the throughout the building. And they had different displays on them at different points in time. The highest one where everybody is going up to now being the NASA display, where they were simulating a landing on the moon, both of some unmanned satellites, but also showing you a lunar lander. This is an actual Apollo spacecraft. Of course, we hadn't gotten to the moon yet by this point in time, but they had flown those up in space for testing to mostly make sure that the heat shields and the parachute recovery system worked. One of the big things up at the very top of Expo 67 USA Pavilion was a set of the 3 parachutes used to recover the Apollo spacecraft. And they made it very visible from other parts of the fair during the day. So we've hopped over now to Iran. We've gone from high-tech space stuff to elephant rides. And then we're going to go on some of the amusement rides over there. But basically, they had the safari area here. You could take the elephant ride. You could also take a Jeep type ride through it. Get pictures of lions and tigers and of course bears. No, I don't think they had bears. Little train here, Old Faithful 99, chugging away through the track at L'Oran. And again, it's the challenge of doing some of these films, scanning them, is the lighting. They were made to be seen across a room, in a dark room, being done with a very, very bright light. So you have to come up with something that balances out what we're doing today, seeing it on a TV set in a bright room. So it's a bit of a challenge. If it's a Kodachrome film like this was, they generally hold up their colors fairly well. The Ansco stuff we'll see later, you'll see that did not at all. But considering this is 50 plus years old, it's come out fairly nicely. And just like the 64 World's Fair, you could drive your car around. Again, the overexposure in this is because it was shot that way. The fellow guy or gal that took it, every now and then just didn't have it set quite right. Rub-a-dub-dub, a couple people in a tub going around the little log, not a log flume, but a little water flume ride. The log flume is in the back here, and I think we'll see that coming up. But all sorts of kids' activities going along here. All right, so let me jump to the next one. We're still in the LaRonde. We're up on the spiral, the observation platform that would take you up to the top there. And we're getting nice views. First of all, the marina down below, the replica of one of the ships that were famous for helping settle the area. Now we've hopped back over out of LaRonde, watching the mini train go around. Scandinavia in the background. One of the theme pavilions was just off to the right. The mini trains or mini rails were a great way to see Expo. There was 2 different systems that ran around, gave you a nice ride. They used to let you at the very beginning ride as much as you wanted, and they found out people would just stay on it. Oh, this is real quick here. That statue moves around. And again, that's part of the nice things about the movies, because I've had tons of pictures of that guy, and he's laying out there in storage today on the property, but there's no indications he moves in still pictures. When you see him actually going and turning, it gives a new set of vitality to it. Wind-powered sculpture over at Swan Lake. Turn in different directions because that vane's angled in different ways to do it, but that's all powered by the wind. Looking across at Montreal itself. I remember in my college years when we were going back to Man in His World, we'd be looking eagerly over at the Molson's Brewery across the water. Over to Japan now. They had a very nice garden. Very, very sort of peaceful spot with all the hustle and bustle of Expo going around. USA Pavilion, we're again on one of the mini rails. USA and USSR across the channel from each other. It was really neat. The little mini rail went right into the USA Pavilion and gave you a great view of it. I always wondered how much that influenced the Disney designers to put the monorail right through the Contemporary Resort Hotel. And as I said, the biosphere is still there today. The plastic skin is gone, lost in a fire that ignited by a welder's torch. But and over to one of the main islands, the big tall tower is a Great Britain Pavilion. Down below you have beer gardens. You have I can see Kaleidoscope, the round multicolor pavilion. We'll see that closer up coming up. Burma. Kaminko here, you tested your sensations of sound and feeling. Walkway between the 2 islands. Down below you have a German band dancing on the little stage down there. Looks like they're doing, I don't know if it's the chicken dance, but they're doing something something of a dance there for us. And we'll hop over to the next one here.
The monorail was eventually taken out, right? It's not there anymore.
I think there's still one over in La Ronde. If anybody that's in the area today can tell us. The main one, it was kind of interesting. In the later years, as part of Man in His World were not being used, the mini rail would take you across the one island that wasn't being used, because you would get on the island that was being used, it would cross over to the other one, then come back. So it was kind of a surreal thing that you're on this train looking down and all the empty pavilions and the empty streets. You know, it was sort of surreal, but that one was eventually taken out. But it was, like I said, a great way to get there. I interrupted myself before. It was so popular that after a while they had to tell you you could not ride it nonstop for free. Everybody had to get off at this station, then you could reboard it if you wanted. There was no, you know, it just didn't have the capacity to allow people to go all day nonstop. So some of the theme pavilions, Alex Calder's giant statue down below. Thailand pavilion brought over from the 64 World's Fair and expanded for Expo 67. Next door, right next to is Burma. And we start getting into some of the other pavilions of the Far East and that. Those were Arab ones back there. India sticking up in the background. Shops on a bridge going across the waterway. Cuba was officially, as an American, you were not supposed to go to the Cuban pavilion as a show of our dislike for Cuba, but I think that made it more popular, forbidden fruit sort of thing. Again, just a real variety of architecture, you know, pavilions based on Jamaican architecture, and right next to it is the European Economic Community, modern stainless steel structure. The USSR pavilion in the back was taken down and moved over to Moscow, where it's there today. She looks so happy, doesn't she? Oh, please take the camera off me. This is Mexico. I mentioned Kaleidoscope. This is a real interesting design, kind of a simple building down below with this big circular structure up there. In one of the later years, they painted it at one solid color. I think it was blue. And it really shows you what a difference the paint job made, that, you know, how it changed through all the primary colors as you walked around it. There's Switzerland again with the rotating sculpture. Austria, Iran, Swan Lake. Then we're over at Habitat 67, prefab concrete blocks all stacked together. At the time, it was supposed to originally have been about 3 times the size, and budget cuts cut down to what it is today. These are German destroyers that are in town visiting for the Expo. It was very popular to bring Navy ships in from all around the world, have the crews go and mingle throughout Expo, but also be allowed to tour the ships. You have the hovercraft. If this was a sound movie, you would know just how loud that was. Going back to Habitat, if you want to move there today, you can, as long as you have $1 million plus in your pocket ready to buy an apartment there. Steel Pavilion had the sounds and smells of a steel mill. And again, the two adversaries across the channel from each other. But down at this end of the island, there was done more about man and agriculture. So you had farm equipment and different pens of animals, things like that. A marked contrast from the high-tech stuff you know, throughout most of the site. And again, this is down the agriculture area. And now we get to go and enjoy Ascochrome. So again, this was all just about solid purple and faded. I did my best to try to bring the colors back on it. So there are colors. It's just not going to be as good or vibrant as Kodachrome is. But they got some nice views of it. They basically came in from the U.S., photographed the border crossing and all the rest of it. The footage of them taking the train out to Expo was too bad to salvage. So we arrive as they come in. We're outside the Korean pavilion. One of those pavilions that was built in its native country, taken apart, brought back to the Expo site and put back together. Real grainy footage of the USA pavilion. There's Maine. Back to New York there. One of the theme structures. Boy Scouts. You just keep wishing that they had, shot this on Kodachrome, but then, all joking aside, if Anscochrome was what they had, thank goodness they took it, because if they hadn't, we wouldn't have been able to save it. The channel is always very stirred up. It always amazed me that there wasn't fences or anything. There goes the hovercraft again. Because if anybody fell into the channel, they'd be going for a high-speed water ride for sure. Again, looking over towards Montreal, going across Swan Lake. Those lights seen there are very popular. They did not have any lights at the top of the fixture. The lights were in the little white columns at the bottom, shown up through a tube and then bounced off the reflectors up at the top. So it made very nice indirect lighting. They were also much lower than the 64 street lights, which were very tall. There's the Polymer Pavilion, touting the wonders of plastics. Air Canada, one of my favorites behind me, done after a Da Vinci flying machine. Iran was done by looking like rolls of carpeting. Very interesting displays inside. Back in the days of the Shah. China was the Taiwan, not mainland China, had an interesting time during its time at Expo, because it caught fire in the kitchen, and they had tremendous fire and had a lot of work to do to get it back reopened, but they did. Many different bandstands located throughout the Expo grounds. Lots of performances. It's interesting, this fellow ice skating here, and we're going to see more ice skating coming up in the next film too. The obligatory take pictures of the family. And our mini rail going around again. Line up here for mini rail blue. Flags roll from the United Nations Pavilion. The big concrete building is the metro station, which is still there today. You can take the metro out to the site, come popping up and walk around on the grounds. And you can see they like taking pictures from the train, because you got to see all of Expo very easily sitting down. As I mentioned, the system took you across the bridge from island to island. So we're getting over towards where the USSR. Look at the lines for the pavilion, very popular. They had these large boats, vaporettos, they call them, after boats in Venice, who would take you around the canals. We'll see in the next movie, you also had gondolas. You had all sorts of different watercraft that you could tour the Expo site. The Expo Express train, one of the first fully automated trains in North America, carried you around the site. Unfortunately, after Expo ended, it only ran for a year or so. There's Kaleidoscope again. And the trains were taken off, sat in the yard for years, and eventually sold for scrap metal. Mexico, often entertained by a mariachi band playing there. India. Australia had a fake coral reef, and in the background displays of kangaroos and other indigenous animals. That was very popular. People could come out and see a real kangaroo. Look at the crowds there. Expo 67, very popular, did very well with its attendance, and that's what was the inspiration for keeping it going as Man in His World for the additional years. You had a Judaism pavilion and an Israel pavilion. That big diamond-shaped thing there was called the Gyrotron ride. This is the family getting ready to leave Montreal as they're heading back to the United States. So they got the last movie in. This was the sort of view I saw when I drove in here, I think in 1969 during my college years. I came driving into Montreal on the same road. I was going in the opposite direction they're going. But all of a sudden I look over and there's Expo 67 still there. I mean, it was a real shock. So that I made an immediate detour over there. And my college buddies didn't want to go so much, but I was the driver. So I agreed I would drop them off someplace else and find them later. They said, well, maybe we'll hang around with you and take a look and see what it's like. And turned out none of them wanted to leave and go and do what they wanted to do originally. So I made some converts there. And we say goodbye to Montreal. Now we're going to get into a nicer restored film. This was all done in Kodachrome. This was actually several different reels that are spliced together. But again, you see what's called Cosmos Walk with the mini rail going across it and people going across it. In this particular one, I think I scanned it 4, maybe 5, I think 4 different times at different exposures and try to put it all together, working it out. That tower off to the right there, Carillon Tower, still there in the hills today, was predated Expo. There's Iran off to the right, China. And look at all those street lights. Aren't they just wonderful? Over the years, they took them down as they stopped using different parts of Expo and they put them out in the boneyard. This is the people lining up for the USA Pavilion. And now, just like the luminaires are prized possessions of people, we'll hear more ice skating. Just like the luminaires are more prized possessions of people from the 64 fair, people are trying to find the Expo 67 ones, but for the most part, they were destroyed. So there's a number of people that have built their own, sometimes from blueprints and other times just from photos, and they're a great way to bring the Expo time back. I keep trying to ask if anybody would do those as a table lamp, because I think it would be a really, really neat desk lamp. Again, you have the column, the white columns you can see standing up, bounce the light down below onto your desk. So I have zero mechanical expertise and stuff like that, but if anybody out there has the interest in doing it, I will send you lots of pictures of lights. And if you could build a desk lamp, I'd be one of your first customers. Folks watching one of the performances at one of the many stadiums or bandstands scattered around. Some of our ever-present nuns that go to so many World's Fairs. And here's the group performing. After each of these films are scanned, they go into a stabilizing and processing program that takes out the camera jitter. And because again, most 8mm films, if you look at your own, they'll kind of bounce up and down or left and right a little as the film gates were not done to a very high tolerance. The computer is able to map a frame going up, frame going down, and start putting it back together. So it's a great tool to have. Back out to Japan now. A little people watching. Luckily, we don't catch her throwing her trash away. Train station over there, again, for the Expo Express system. You could take that and ride it over to the La Ronde area of the park. It was a free transportation system. Austria. You can go to the Wienerwald restaurant there if you were in the area. Iran in the background again. Down at the very bottom of that shot was the telephone pavilion. There's part of Habitat across the river. Close-up views looking at Montreal. One of the many sculptures on site. Ethiopia. Indians of Canada in the background. Again, these move around a little quick to describe them all, but those trees were growing out of the roof of the pavilion, and during the days of Man in His World, the trees were gone. The people tree here, with all the globe, with all the pictures, they forgot to get a license for people to use those pictures in later years. So in the Man in His World days from 1968 on, it was just colored cloth panels. They didn't have the rights to the photographs to use. You can date this as being early in 1967 because the Africa Pavilion doesn't have the names of all the nations painted out on it. So, you know, sometimes you're looking for clues. People wearing coats, there's not a lot of leaves on the trees. Was it because it's spring and it hasn't warmed up yet? Or is it fall and it's gotten chilly? So in this particular case, by looking at the Africa Pavilion, you can date that it's early. Canadian pulp and paper, one of my favorite designs because it's just so silly. Parts of the gardens that were there, they had very nice gardens, rose garden that you could wander through with lots of sculptures. Again, going through the USA Pavilion with the very, very long escalators that would take you up to the upper levels. Expo services area, lots of small shops and gift stands and snack bars, that sort of thing. Information booths right there. So a real quick view there with some of the ticket booths and turnstiles going in. And one of our favorite shots, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Nice of them to turn so you get a great view. The people tree again. People from all across Canada doing different things, different businesses, ways of life, and people from all the different provinces. Nice empty, not empty, but wide plaza. You know, they didn't confine you in for narrow spots or anything. So even on a crowded day, I never felt like I was particularly penned in or congested. The mini rails were automated. When they later used one of them for the Hemisphere 68, they decided they didn't want to take a chance on automation, so they put a human driver in it who crashed and killed some people. So I guess I'm a big skeptic of self-driving cars, but they proved that self-driving mini rails were better than manual ones. France Pavilion is still there today as a casino, and the building that was right before it is still there as a service building for it. The France Pavilion and the UK Pavilion. Trinidad, Tobago, steel drum performances down below all the time. Here's Israel coming up. You wish they were sound movies, you know. Oh, there's a phone booth down below, those dome-shaped structures. Turned out to be totally impractical because they acted as a sound magnifier. When you were on your side of the phone booth, your sound bounced up to the person on the other side and vice versa. They also acted as a magnifying glass if you were standing there on a hot day. So they looked like cool phone booths. They were found to be impractical. But hey, that's part of what makes a fair fun. You try new things and you see what works and what doesn't. Most of the Arab nations stayed for the entire time of Expo. One of them pulled out after the 7-Day War, and it closed down. But most of the others stayed there. It did cause some political angst and all at the time. But it was nice. You had all these outdoor patios to eat on. That was one thing I enjoyed about Expo, was that the food, they had some very nice restaurants, many of them that were really out of my budget. But they also had a lot of snack bars, so you could get a lot of international cuisine, not just a hot dog or a hamburger sitting out of the snack bar, but you could go and get food from the various nations and sit outside and enjoy it. It was much better for a budget point of view. Some of the restaurants like Czechoslovakia, very popular and very hard to get in. Long lines for them. As I mentioned, different boats of different types. So the gondola coming over, get another shot of it. Motorized gondola, though, he didn't have to sit there and punt his way with a pole and take you all the way around the hard way. Little saipans, as I mentioned, there were all sorts of different ways you could go around. So in some cases, you had different nations get together. Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada would combine to save money and do a pavilion together. The Expo Express over at Isle Notre Dame. And you could take that over, as I mentioned, over to the La Ronde area. Great Britain. The ruins of Great Britain and France Pavilion were still there when they did the episode of Battlestar Galactica, where they go to a deserted planet ruined by nuclear war. And I've got a picture of that on my website, but they were still there. Middle of winter, no heating. The actor Dirk Benedict went over there, said it was very cold. But kind of interesting to see the skeletal remains of the pavilions being used. And if you go there today, you can go to the casino, and which is in the former France Pavilion. It's you know, kind of interesting to see that the outside looks very much the same, and when you go in, you don't even know that it was the World's Fair Pavilion. But a nice casino. Carol and I went there and had fun. Indians of Canada created a bit of a controversy because they had a display on how their lands had been stolen from them. And that was a big issue for some of the press and other people, and you know, reacting to it. But it there was a big cry about taking the display out, and it was decided to let it stay. Engineers Plaza, fountain, and little statue there in the center. Again, another one of the boats that you could tour around on. It was a small charge for these. I don't remember what it was, 50 cents or something like that. It wasn't particularly onerous. They gave you a guided tour with narration. So Indians of Canada, and off to the right, the United Nations, the flags of all the countries that were exhibiting there at Expo 67. I'm a sucker for tulips, so I was glad that the photographer got some shots of those in here. Canada had several different buildings. We've seen the Kati Mavik, the inverted pyramid. We've seen the people tree. You know, they had a variety of different ones, and then each of the provinces had their own pavilions as well. There's the base for some of the street lights there, those columns going up, or people watching. In the later years, the tile work started falling apart. They painted it over, and put some other tile work in, but this particular design looking like the carpets was really nice. And again, one of the outdoor patios that you could eat on. And once again, we're back on the mini rail. Kaminko again over there. Again, over here, there was a quick shot of Africa that had been repainted midway, well, not even midway, about a quarter of the way through the season. They did a different motif on it. What's interesting about the mini rail is a fairly smooth ride. You could see the car in front of you bouncing around a little bit, but it was not as bouncy as the People Mover had been put in at Disneyland about the same period of time in Tomorrowland. So that they used a different transport system that basically the transport came out of a motor on the lead car that pulled you along this, where the Disneyland system used embedded wheels on the track. Every time you went over one of those wheels at Disneyland, you went ka-thump, ka-thump, ka-thump as you went through it. This one just pulled you along a nice smooth track. So it gave you a much nicer platform for photography. When I'm restoring pictures of the ride at Disneyland, I have to start dialing down the image stabilization part because every time it gets to one of those ka-thumps, it would drive itself crazy. Electronic signboard there, done with paper tape, just like the messages that were on the arches at the 64 Fair in New York. Engineers Plaza again. Monaco off to the right there, Principality of Monaco. Caddy Mavac, the inverted pyramid, go up to the top, look at the sculptures. We're starting to get later in the day. You can see the lights turning more golden. The shadows are becoming more pronounced. Right, that fountain there is asbestos fountain, and that was before everybody realized that asbestos had so many potential health risks. But at that point, you could sit there and you could play in the water that was circulating through a giant multi-ton block of asbestos. At nighttime, I just left some of these in here. It's really hard at night to pick up some of the shots of things that cross the water. Here again, obviously the USSR Pavilion. But I'll just leave some of this run for a moment or two. He did get some nice views. You have to really know what you're looking at for some of these. I look at it and say, oh, okay, that was the Kamenko Pavilion. Okay, here we are looking at Burma. But again, if you're not overly familiar with the shapes of some of the buildings or their juxtaposition with each other, it's kind of hard to know which ones you're looking at. But I do think he had some nice shots of Laurent coming up at night. Thailand. Kaleidoscope. Not entirely sure. More Thailand. This is what happens when you shoot from one side of a channel across the other. You end up with little tantalizing bits of light, trying to figure what they are. Come on, get us over to Laurent, take your train ride and get over there. Then again, you see how the lights work. The columns are lit up. The lights are shining up at the disc there, and then they go bouncing off. They had fireworks shows every night. I don't think we caught them any in this particular reel. but they were a popular way to end the evening. If I remember right, the La Ronde area did stay open later than the main part of Expo, is sort of like the way the lake amusement area at 64. Lights of Montreal in the background. We're almost through this section. I'll probably go back and edit some of these things down. But again, I liked it because it just showed you how prolific those street fixtures, the lighting fixtures were. Because they weren't up so high and they weren't giant glaring lights that could cover a huge area, they had to put many more of the smaller lights in. Well, here's La Ronde, so we've got nighttime view. Oh, and it was shorter than I thought. That wasn't worth waiting for, was it? So I think that's all the ones I had done for today. So let me stop sharing and just go through. Oh, the mini rail is still there. Great. I knew it was there. Boo to Ansco Chrome. So let me just go through the various chats here. Kodachrome is the 3-strip Technicolor of the amateur world. Yeah, it really did hold up an awful lot better. I have Kodachromes, I have Ektachromes, I've got the Ansco Chromes, I've got Agvachrome, and there's no doubt that Kodachrome is better. They still did shift a bit, but the like this last reel that I just did needed maybe a, I don't know, 5 or 10% color adjustment, where things like the Ansco Chrome, that was a 200% change. I literally had to put it through the color correction process, maxed out twice to get it as close as I did. So for the folks that went to Expo 67, do you see some familiar spots and favorites? You feel free to unmute yourself and put up your hand, or I can unmute you if you want.
I definitely recognize stuff from when it was Man and His World, which is when I saw it in the early 70s. A lot of that's still there.
Yeah, it was kind of, I've always said, it was kind of fun every year to go back and see every year for Man and His World, what was there in 72 compared to 71 and changed in 73, because the USA Pavilion would be here, then it's over here, then it's over here, then it's back here. So it'd be like, if you went to Disneyland and you walked in and you went to go on the Pirates of the Caribbean, and instead it was the Haunted Mansion. It was just a crazy thing. And then there'd be new pavilions. I mean, there were some, I remember going to the Bulgaria Pavilion, and Bulgaria at that point was, sort of like locked off to the rest of the world. They didn't have, much interaction with anybody. And, walk in and, wow, Bulgaria, where did you guys come from? And they were there a number of years. They weren't there in 68, but they came back in 69 and they were there for a bunch of years. So, and they moved around too, wherever the rent was cheaper, off they go. Baron, you got your hand up?
Yeah. Tell me again about the Kaleidoscope Pavilion. Who sponsored it, and is it still there? I don't remember who said.
I don't remember. I think Kaleidoscope was, I think it might have been Dow Canada, if I remember right. Yeah, Harold's nodding. Good, I got one right.
Sponsored by the Chemical Companies of Canada.
Uh-huh.
Chemical Companies of Canada. Okay.
Right. I think it was a consortium of them.
Okay. Is it still there?
No.
Oh.
A lot on that island has disappeared because of the construction of the rowing basin for the 1976 Summer Olympic Games.
Oh, okay.
So some of the great pavilions, the British Pavilion was right in the way of that. The French Pavilion, the casino, was just on the edge, so it survived. But others, like the German tent, was gone. The agriculture area was gone. And now you can still go visit that island. That's actually the island used for the Montreal Grand Prix race every year. Okay. And you can actually bike on that trail and just follow the track that the Grand Prix cars follow every year. So it's a
Okay.
very popular cycling area now. And they do have some boating events on that basin, which was about a mile long. So 1.5 kilometers for the Olympics.
After the expo, had the Kaleidoscope Pavilion remained, or did it come down like, like a lot of pavilions come down after the fair closes? Do you know?
Yeah, it was there for quite a few years. And again, the chief, oh, sorry, it must be mailed every time. It changed over time that they took out the multicolor panels on it, went to a blue and white sort of motif. It was not anywhere near as exciting, but it was there for, again, if you go to my site, worldsfairphotos.com, go to Expo 67, there's a chart there of all the pavilions and what became of them year after year after year. So some of them stayed open right up to the end. Others had multiple tenants. There were some like Mexico that they announced it was going to be torn down and refurbished and brought back. So all that was there for a couple of years was a sign saying, we're coming back. And then eventually the sign went away too. But I tried to track as many places as what went where, and it was hard in some of the things like the theme pavilions, because they would have 10 displays in one year, 6 the next year, 14 the next year, as they took and divided and subdivided the interior for different exhibitors. But it was what I basically did was they put out a really neat map. And you can, again, go to my site, look at the map. And you would buy the, I think it was like $1, giant fold out map. And it was really nicely done because rather than just having a square to say, France, it was drawn to look like the France Pavilion. So it was really great that you could look around and try to, orient yourself. I then took the map year after year and year and said number 64, pick a number, was the USA Pavilion. Oh, it became Biodome. The next year it was Ruined by Fire, that sort of thing. So it was fun kind of putting it all together. And then all of a sudden, there'd be a pavilion that hadn't been there anyplace else before, that somebody decided to build a new snack bar or something else, or others that were just there, like Polymer, the one I mentioned that was the plastic pavilion. That was there in 67. I think in 68 it wasn't. It was just the plastic structure was there, but no exhibits. And it sat there empty, empty, empty. And all after about 4 or 5 years, somebody came by and said, "Oh, the UN Pavilion became the Postal Pavilion. So now where's the UN Pavilion going to go? We'll move into Polymer." So you have some of them that, went 5 years of just sitting there as a shell, and all of a sudden somebody else moves in and takes it over. It was kind of neat. So
Okay. Well, that was primary to or secondary to my really first question, and that was two-part. It's too bad that our modern day LED panels, active LED panels that we see all over the place in football stadiums and Times Square and places like that, wasn't available during 68, because I could see those fins or those veins that surrounded the building, that was part of the inherent design of the building, instead of being painted different hues of color that has encircled the building, being designed in these LED panels. And
oh yeah,
and that would have been a heck of a light show, because it not only would it, you could apply color, but it would have been dynamic and being on applying video and motion and everything else that you see. That's the first that caught my attention when I saw that, is like, well, that's a great looking building. I like the design, as an architect, that caught my eye, but and I hadn't been really familiar with it. But that the only thing that really sparked my interest was when you said, in a few years later, they had repainted the thing all blue and it looked different and sort of didn't have quite the feel of the chroma paint scheme that it had. And that's when I said, well, geez, it's too bad that, there weren't LED panels. And that's why I was wondering if it was still there today. Was wondering, geez, why doesn't somebody refit that with that? It would be a heck of a light show and a heck of a pavilion and a heck of something. But
Yeah, here's a later view of it, and you can see just kind of the
oh yeah,
blue
painted in
panels.
blue, right?
Yeah, and then you can also, in this particular angle, he caught it where you can see through the panels, and if you caught it at the side view at the right angle, it looked like a very substantial building. If you go and look at it this way, you can see that it was basically a bunch of panels going around, a small building inside. But over the years they did it, and what was nice was I think they realized their mistake and later brought back the colors. So, but one of the nice things about Expo was, and it's interesting you mentioned, Baron, about the lights, because Carol and I were up there, I guess was for the 50th anniversary of Expo 67. And they did a show on the side of one of the buildings in Montreal. I don't remember the name of the building right now, but I helped provide a bunch of pictures for it. And they did a really nice thing where they projected with LED displays and that images of Expo, but then also people performing, and things were changing colors and shapes and everything. And it was a really great way to see the 50-year-old buildings in modern technology. And you can only think about what we would have today. Now, a friend of mine in Florida recently bought a tremendously expensive and I think kind of silly light kit for his house that he had installed on all the eaves of his house, and he lights it up for different colors, and it's all pre-programmable with a computer console. So for the a thing like the St. Patrick's Day, he can light it up and do this whole thing with different colors, green pulsing and everything. And this month, he's really going at it because he's celebrating Pride Month. So his whole house is a LED rainbow lighting up. I keep wondering how much. He's been kind of coy in exactly how much it costs, but I keep wondering how thrilled his neighbors must be. This sort of thing would like be having a lighthouse next to your house. I mean, just pulsing lights and everything else. So I know that we have one guy here in our town really goes way out for Christmas and has the whole house, programmed with music, and you can tune in on your FM radio. And he had it playing in the yard, and then neighbors made him dial that down so you can play it on your car. But imagine sitting next to this guy and everybody driving up, and it's kind of a dead end street. So everybody's got to kind of go up, see you, turn around, come back. I'm sure the neighbors curse when the extension cords come getting out. But this guy, Gary in Florida, he can just go crazy any night of the week he wants. So I don't know. I hope nobody here has a giant light fixture on their house I've just made fun of. Hey, Richard.
Yeah, hi. Maybe Harold can weigh in on this, but when I visited Montreal about 4 or 5 years ago, they had a tremendous interactive portion of Montreal that was keyed to an application that you could run on your phone. And what you would come to one of the designated spots, tell this application you were there, and then a projector would project something onto the side of a building or dim a light, and you'd hear a narration about the history of that spot where you were. And they had about 20 such linked sites, and it culminated at the end of this 20-stop kind of scavenger hunt at the main section of Old Montreal, where they projected a very, very huge thing on the side of one of the tallest buildings there that was a store that worked in all the characters that you saw at the 20 stops before it. Harold, have you ever seen that, or you know of that?
Not directly, but I think it may have been in 2017 in connection with not only the 50th anniversary of Expo, but it also happened to be the 375th anniversary of the city of Montreal's founding.
Yeah.
So they had all sorts of other events on within the rest of the city for that particular anniversary. So I don't remember that particular app, but it sounds as if that was something for the 375th anniversary in 2017.
Yeah, each of the stops told a different story, and they brought a character to life. One was very, very affecting. because Montreal is kind of a rowdy, wonderful place.
Oh, yes.
It's always had that reputation, and that's the vibe I get every time I've been there. But they had a very, very interesting one about two people, an older couple that decided to adopt somebody from the Holocaust area,
Mhm.
and they brought a little toy for it, and it turned out that the Jewish kid from the Holocaust was about 18 when it was absolutely inappropriate, but they accepted him, and it also told about about the tolerance that Port Montreal likes, and I believe has. It's very, very polyglot, and
Oh, yes. Very multicultural.
Is it's interesting the different memories or things you have, and the multicultural part. To me, I was just reading the chats here. It looks like Rob Bianco saying he was expected to be wowed like the '64 fair, but the magic wasn't there. To me, I kind of got a kick out of Expo '67 because to me it seemed more. I mean, first of all, the '64 World's Fair, my first one, true love. Everybody knows I'm a nut about it. But Expo '67 is real close right behind it. And one of the part that I enjoyed about it was that the international exhibits were, I went to just about every single one of them over and over and over. And, to be able to talk to these people, because again, going to Canada was really cool. I'd been up there before with my grandparents, but that was a foreign country, I didn't think I'd ever do the travel that I later did in my business career to go to these places. So I just really loved the international aspect of it. I really had a great time with it. There's a question here about modular trees. Let me just pull up here real quick. The trees, they were green for that year, but then in later years they changed different designs. Like here, it was used for interpol, so it was all done with these basic blue things. And it's kind of interesting. If you have a building shaped like a forest and you're doing something not shaped like a forest, what do you do? I've got another. Oh, and by the way, here you can see the great street lights in front of it. The columns down at the bottom held the fluorescent tubes that bounced off those reflector panels. Another shot I don't have it right here in front of me. This one is all done in oranges and yellows and kind of swirled pattern, sort of looking like a camouflage design. Again, you don't have anything to do with trees. You just painted different colors and just try to get distract people on it that it's no longer trees, it's geometric shapes. Randy?
Yeah, I think the repurposing of some of the pavilions kind of led to some travesties for the architecture. Israel became like a few years later, it was like hot pink and orange. I think it was like a humor pavilion or something like that. It just looked hideous. But I think as time progressed, they went for the brighter colors, kind of like Chrysler did. In New York, '64 was basic white, '65 brighter colors.
Yeah, I guess because we were getting more into the mod days and everything else at that point in time.
The psychedelic era.
Right.
Here I found a picture of it as the Illusions Pavilion. Let me just go back here and pop that up. So 1 second, share screen. So here you have, it used to be the Steel Pavilion on the left. The word steel is gone now. And I think there was a thing about armor and cannons and that sort of stuff. And now it's the Illusions Pavilion. So they've changed the color scheme again. So again, that was part of what I enjoyed every year for all the years I went back to Man of This World. You get there and what have you done today? But yes, some cases, as Randy mentioned, the designs, like one of my all-time favorite pavilions at Expo was Air Canada. It was, I mentioned before, it was done as Da Vinci flying machine. So it's all these rotated steps going up. And it was just, bright and airy and everything. Well, in the later years, it became the Pakistan Pavilion, and they painted it like brown or something. And it's like, you know, when you see it for 5, 6 years with one motif, then you're back another year and it's still there, but now it's painted a really drab kind of brown. It's like, what did you do to it? But Pakistan was not a bright color sort of thing, so they went with something else, and it was still there, but it wasn't the same anymore. It just wasn't. But yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, that pulp and paper pavilion, according to a book I have, was the most photographed building during Expo 67. And I guess the USSR pavilion was the most attended pavilion. Now, I always found it interesting. I didn't learn this till probably about 10 years ago, that the mini rail system on, I think it's Ile Saint Helene, I think, where La Ronde is, was actually, with the yellow canopies, was purchased from the Swiss National Exhibition, which had been held in 1964. And also that La Spiral, that spiral device that took you up so you could see, get an aerial view of the site, was also purchased from that exhibition.
Yeah, I recently bought a box of slides and a guidebook from the 64 Switzerland exposition. I have not yet got them restored. I'm going to get them on my site. But that was people talk about the World's Fair in 1964 in Switzerland, and most people go, "What are you talking about?" There's actually, I think I showed it one other time, a really great movie of Walt Disney going to it. He was there. It's a silent movie, but people getting their pictures taken with Walt, and he's posing. He's having a great time. So it popped up on eBay, a guidebook from it. I went off and bought it, and I've got to get it digitized and scanned. It's on my to-do list.
Yeah,
so,
Bill, that would be great if you could do that when you get it done.
yeah.
To do a presentation on that. I've seen a lot of pictures of it. It was a pretty amazing event architecturally. I remember, I've seen since that, New York was panned by a lot of critics. A lot of critics said, that what happened in Switzerland in 64 is what should have happened in New York in 64, as far as the architecture and the use of transportation systems. And the Swiss National Exhibition has some kind of a weird thing, like it's like a moving wall and you sit up against it, and it kind of transported you around the perimeter or portion of the perimeter.
Yeah, I say the architects for 64 is, kiss my butt. I mean, I thought the 64 World's Fair, the architecture, the Bell System Pavilion, when you look at that, the giant building held up on 4 tiny little feet, how the hell did they do that, And then where else are you going to be able to go and see something designed as a giant car, as the size of, the city block you live on, done as a car? I mean, it's interesting because I look at a lot of pictures of the 39 World's Fair, and I really like the design, all the sculptures and the artwork and everything that was around the 39 fair. And I really wish they had done more of that for 64. And maybe that's what I liked a lot about Expo 67 too, was tremendous amount of art. And I one time online, I made some comment about not understanding modern art. And this woman just attacked me like crazy, being a snob or something. And I said, I don't get it. It doesn't, but some pieces I really liked. I mean, and I mentioned earlier when the video was playing, the Rose Garden. If you went out into the Rose Garden at Expo 67, it was just littered with artwork, all sorts of stuff all over the place. That the flower budget they must have had for it was insane. And that was one of the things I liked, was less concrete-y. At the 64 fair was, obviously buy a Ford, buy a GE toaster, whatever. I thought 67 was more like, come in, walk around, take a look, relax, put up your feet, and I thought it was an interesting dichotomy. And I love the two of them. Like I said, I'm just that close between, the two of them, but the 64 still wins out for me.
Yeah, one of the things that I really like about Expo 67, and your movies showed it, was you could just stand at one position and watch all this movement. The mini rail going by, the Expo Express, the Vaporettos, the gondolas. There was just so much going on that caught your eye. That was, of course, true at 64 and 65 in New York, but I don't think quite to that extent.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing that unfortunately was Expo 67 is so many of the attractions were done with films. It was really, they didn't have the big ride systems like Futurama, you know, or Ford or anything. So they entertained you with films, and a lot of the films had to be done in their very special theaters that were built for Expo 67. You know, things like the Labyrinth Pavilion or, you know, Kaleidoscope and some of these others that there's just no way to capture it. You know, we've got tons and tons of pictures of the 64 World's Fair of Futurama or the Ford dinosaurs or that sort of thing, but you don't have pictures of the movies. I've got a couple on my site. People took pictures of the Labyrinth, particularly the gigantic screen in the center. But for the most part, the movies have been kind of lost, and I'd love to see some of those films again. And I've got some great articles about, you know, the various movies that were done for it. But that kind of made it a moment in time that was gone. Harold?
Well, in fact, one of the movies that was very popular was in the Ontario Pavilion, my own province, and called A Place to Stand. And the following year, it won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Short Subject. And you can still watch it on YouTube if you just type in A Place to Stand, Expo 67, and it has been restored. And it was one of the first films that used multi-images that shifted around the screen. So it was something like 18 hours of film was edited down to about 18 minutes for the final product with all these multiple images. So it's possible to watch that. Very catchy song as well, an earworm, A Place to Stand. And even 57 years later, or 55 years later, most Ontarians do know that song, A Place to Stand, Ontario.
Well, that reminds me, you were going to sing us the Expo 67 theme song, both English and French.
Oh, I wouldn't attempt singing it, but it was controversial because at first it did not mention Montreal or Expo 67. The title in English is Hey Friend, Say Friend, Come On Over. And in French, Bonjour, Bonjour, One Day. And that it went into that. And Mayor Drapeau was especially upset that it didn't mention Expo or Montreal. So one of the recordings had the vocalist at the beginning say something like, come to Montreal for Expo 67, and then launched into the song.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting. You think if you were going to do a song about a World's Fair, you'd mention the World's Fair.
Yes.
You know, Bill, Expo 67, I think, you know, is often credited with premiering many different advanced film formats, you know, the multi-screens and all that. But you know, if you look at New York, they actually had a lot of great filmed, exhibits, you know, part of their exhibit. And didn't, is it To Be Alive? Wasn't that at New York? And I think it won an Academy Award.
Yeah, New York really did have a bunch. You had, the Cinerama. You know, you had the Cinerama Dome type presentation. So you had big screens. You had the multi-screen. Like I think the one that was the biggest one of them was IBM.
All right.
Where I think they used 20-something screens. And again, today they've tried to reproduce it, but you really can't do it. I mean, it was just so big and it was so amazing to the senses and things moving around. The 3M, the one you just mentioned, rather, I think that was originally done on 3 screens. I think To Be Alive, I think that was 3 screens that came together. But I think what made Montreal stand out though was that there were so many of them, and they did a lot of the multi-screen presentations, for it. If you think about, I'm trying to remember what other movies of 64 would really stand out. I mean, you mentioned the big one, of course, is To Be Alive. I mean, you can still go see that today. Luckily, that's that they took the theater, transported it, and that's still there. But if you go online to YouTube, somebody did do a recreation of part of the IBM film. And what was interesting on that one was they had all the elements, but they didn't have any real record of how they showed or it came together. And it turned out one guy, an amateur, had gone in and filmed it on his own. I think it was either 8 or 16 millimeter camera, and he had it there, and they were able to use his thing to say, oh, okay, this pops up here for 7 seconds, and now this comes up down here. So digitally, let's see how we can put this whole thing together. So it was kind of interesting that an amateur's, lousy, grainy, not so good movie ended up being how they used those pristine elements to put it back. So anybody else go up to Expo 67? Bring back any memories for anybody? Scott shaking your head, you weren't there? No? So close, huh?
I had gone up to Montreal with my wife and some other friends. We had just finished 2 weeks of camping. Unfortunately, our time was limited. We spent too much camping in the woods.
Oh, that's always good up there too.
Yeah, best thing was after 2 weeks in the woods without a shower, we drew straws to see who got to go first.
Yeah.
You can relate to that.
It's really funny. Somebody posted a picture, something about campfire, and the guy's sitting at a campfire, and there's about 8 logs around it. And he says, I have a unique skill. And he's at log 1 and the smoke's going there. And log 2, he moves around, the smoke's going there. And log 7, the smoke's going there.
That's
I mean,
that's me.
Yeah.
That's me. Yeah.
So I made the comment, this happens to me when I work collisions. Well, that night we were out working a collision, and we went through more flares on Tuesday night than we've gone through in most. I mean, it was Tuesday night, we had 2 massive collisions with the debris fields that were 100 feet down this way and glass everywhere. And I was lucky because I was standing up at one end of it. My partner was down at the bad end of it and training a new person, and they went through a lot of flares. And when I came up to them at the end of it, it was like, whoa. She said she had to get home, jump in the shower, and now she gets home at 3 in the morning. She gets home and jumping in the shower just to get the smell of flares off of her. So
Yeah,
I have that skill. The smoke will go straight towards me.
every time.
Yeah.
It's the scout in you.
Bill, you were mentioning about the systems in GM Futurama and Bell System that moved visitors through the exhibits. I attended Expo 2020 in March. It was a very last minute decision. In fact, I actually reserved the hotel, and as a retiree from the airlines, I can still use passes. So all arranged it one day, left the next day. But in my picture behind me is the US Pavilion. And they actually, much to my surprise, it was the only one that I've seen in years. You walked in and you stood on, it's hard to describe. It was like, like a moving sidewalk, but without rails. And it made all kinds of twists and turns throughout the exhibit. And you could either stay on it, or you could, occasionally you would have an area where you could step off. You wanted to concentrate on that particular exhibit and then step back on. But I was impressed that they had that. I mean, the exhibit itself was not much, but the fact that they actually went and installed some kind of a system to transport visitors was, I thought, very impressive.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was on a Zoom call on Thursday. The State Department and some other federal groups have been putting together things as far as U.S. participation in World's Fairs and that. And part of the people on the group were the ones that are trying to put the fair together for is it Minneapolis that they're trying to do?
Minneapolis.
Yeah. And they were asking for input for people. And one thing everybody was saying, how disappointing U.S. pavilions have been since basically, the focus on this talk was like what went right and what went wrong on the 84 World's Fair in New Orleans. And it was said after that, they all became, commercial pavilions. I remember going to Expo 85 and scuba, and I felt like I was at a Texas Instruments showroom. There was nothing about what made America great. it was why you would buy Coca-Cola, or why you would buy Nike, or why you would buy Texas Instrument. So that was one thing we all kept talking about was, your whatever you come up with your show technology is one thing, but God, put some money into these things and show something about your country, and not just your country's products. So I hope they do something different. And again, I don't know how the guys up in Minneapolis are going to pull this off or not. I guess they did not make the list of finalists for the last time they tried it. They're trying it again, and I think there's 5 or 6 countries that are all putting in bids in for, I think it's the 2025 World's Fair, which seems to be getting awfully close to me, to not be turning ground just yet. So be interesting to see. They've also come up with the theme about healthcare being the big theme of it, because I guess, they have so many big hospitals up there. But, I hope it's successful. I hope that they win their bet, but I hope they come up with a, USA pavilion that's interesting. At least you got a good ride out of yours, huh?
Yeah, I actually went twice to it because I was I was impressed with that moving sidewalk system. Yeah.
While I have it here, let me just grab something. If anybody would like a genuine sticker, see if this shows up here, from the Italian Village at the 1984 World's Fair. I had this big box of them. And if anybody sends me a self-addressed stamp envelope, I will be happy to send you. You can stick it on your shirt, you can stick it on your head, you can do whatever you want with it. But if anybody wants one, just send me an address, self-addressed envelope, and I'll send you some Expo 84 Louisiana World's Fair stickers. It's in my never-ending quest to try to get rid of some of the crap I've accumulated.
Bill, where do you find all these 8mm and Super 8s?
I bought a lot of them on eBay over the years. I literally have been buying them for the probably the last 15, 20 years, putting them in boxes in the garage. And the box, I fill up a box, go into the next box, fill up the next box. And a couple of years ago, I said, I got to start getting around to scanning these. And I started with my home movies, me and my brothers growing up and that sort of thing. And I was sending them out to a place to do it. And I realized, oh God, this is going to bankrupt me on what they were charging to do it. And I also wasn't real happy with the results. So I bought a scanner that it was sort of complicated to use. And I did a couple reels and said that was a lot of trouble, put it aside. And then when I finally said I need to do something because I'm running out of space to put all these films I've never watched, I bought the new scanner, which is a massive thing. It's, I don't know, probably weighs 50 pounds. When it got delivered here, Carol was like, what is that? But it does a really nice job of doing it. The whole thing, you have to be realistic. And this scanner can go and handle 16 and 35mm. You can get a really nice scan off a 35mm, but the thing with an 8mm is it's really tiny. It is really, really tiny. So when you blow it up, it's something like 64,000 times to fill a 30-inch monitor, and also blows up each piece of dirt 64,000 times. So
Does it handle 120?
no, it's here's my man, Eddie. Sorry.
Because my wife has all our negatives from our wedding, and they're all on 120 format.
Yeah.
And
Let me just close the door here 1 second. Sorry, the film scanner only handles, the movie scanner only handles movies. So it does 8mm, Super 8, that sort of stuff. For 120, the 2 ways that there's 3 ways you can get into it. One is you can buy a used Nikon CoolScan 9000. But the limitation there is you need a computer that has a FireWire port on it, and a lot of that becomes an issue. There's also one, I think it's from Pacific Images, will handle 120. The other way that I would seriously consider is getting an Epson scanner, the V800 or the V850. I think the 800 is out of production, but the 850 I have the 700 here, and it does an excellent job on the 120s. Basically, you have, I don't know if I have the 120. You have a tray. It disappears here in front of me, but you have a tray. You pop it open, put this the negative on it, put it on the flatbed scanner, and it does a great job. So I've looked into the Epson, and I wish I had an Epson sales hat, that I could get it. The Epson's really nice because it also will do 35mm slides. It will do strips of negatives, but it's also a flatbed scanner. So if you have a print, you can just pop it on there. It has digital ice, so it takes out dirt, dust, and scratches to a large extent. And it also has Epson software for dirt and dust removal, which sometimes works better in certain conditions than the digital ice. So I always scan it 3 times, once without any ice or anything on, once with ice on, once with the Epson software on, and then I go, and in some cases, clone from one to another or, just use it. But it does a really nice job on 120s.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah, Baron.
we all here think that you should just kind of get right up right now and go into the other room and go pick up that 50-pound scanner and haul it back in and show it to us.
It's actually sitting right next to me. If I go and I say, okay, I am now touching it, and that's as far as I'm going to go for it. Here, hang on 1 second here. 1 second. I will happily show you.
I remember when you were telling us that you were purchasing it. I don't recall if you had told us what the purchase price was for this piece of equipment.
Yeah, luckily I got a deal on it, but here I will show you what it looks like. 1 second.
Didn't you say like $500-600, $1,000, something like that?
Yeah, that was it. 500. No, hang on here 1 second. Share screen. And let's see, Google Chrome. Hopefully this does it. Is it showing there, the screen now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
look at that.
Oh,
So it is a big piece of equipment, but I had an older scanner. I was able to get a very nice trade-in on it, and it does a really great job. It's like I said, it's massive, but because I was going to do my family films and that sort of thing, I really wanted to do it right. In actuality, I went way over the top on it because I just wanted to get the best that I potentially could. Somebody's just asked me online yesterday. There are cheaper scanners in the $100 range that do a pretty adequate job, but I didn't like their color rendition, and they do way too much compression. I mentioned this before. The Wolverine Movie Maker Pro, or one called the Kodak Reels, REELZ. They do a good job, but they're very slow. They do 2 frames per second. This scanner I have does 17 frames a second. So just looking at the massive amounts of film I had, there's no way I'd get through 2 frames a second in my lifetime, particularly if I have to go through them as I do and scan it, one with the lights way down for outdoor scenes and ones with the lights way up for the indoor scenes. To have to go through, so a 50-foot reel takes you about 50 minutes to about 35 minutes to do a 50-foot reel. I do a 50-foot reel in 4 minutes. So that was just a huge difference, the time difference. And like I said, I just wanted, I can scan at a full 2K resolution and pick out an amazing amount of detail on stuff. You folks are seeing these movies that I'm showing secondhand. Wayne, would you like to mention, I sent you one. Did you think there was a bit of a difference between what people are seeing on YouTube and what the real thing looks like?
Definitely. And in those lines, I recently had a poor review of one of my photos on a competition on Zoom. And as a result, we had a comparison of originals and photos presented on Zoom, and Zoom does an excellent job of removing things that it thinks aren't important.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of compression that occurs as you show things on Zoom. And then if you look at it on the, what you call it, when I stick them on YouTube, it's getting the Zoom feed, so it's all compressed down. So I can see a lot more when I do the video here. And there was one, Wayne wanted a copy of, he was asking, how does something show? So I just sent him the original and he wrote back and said, wow, night and day. So, again, for what you see, I wouldn't have been happy spending, several $1,000s. What I see in my side, I'm much happier because I'm not seeing it with the compression. So.
Well,
and-
no, and I think as an archivist like you, that's probably you probably can just write the thing off in some ways as as business, because it although it may be expensive in its cost to everybody else who just gets a normal basic scanner. You're essentially using it not only for the bunch of films that you've acquired, but again, as an archivist, I think you'll find use for it, and more in the future, that it will be a worthwhile investment that you put into it, rather than just, okay, one-time deal, it's expensive, I'll get some quality out of it because it scans at 17 frames a second, but then it's going to go in the closet next year and never be used again.
Yeah, it worked out because I do have a business that I do pay taxes on for all my photos and books and everything else. And I did put it on my taxes, and I intend during this period to be offering scans. Sorry, the dogs are having a field day today. As soon as I can put the website together, I'm going to be offering scans to people to do it. And I'm working at the price list, but I intend to have a discount for people that have World's Fair, theme parks, or other movies in the mix, because it's more entertaining for me as I sit here and watch that, as opposed to, Johnny's 4th birthday, that sort of stuff. So probably in about 2 months' time, when I finish it, I'll have it up on the website and do it. And like I said, I have done a number of these for friends. They're some of my old Boy Scout friends here on the call. Other people are, I've got them from my Boy Scout troop. I like to restore them, and I've done a bunch of just freebie stuff for friends and that. And I just again encourage people to get stuff out of your closets. But I'm not doing trying to tout it as a money making thing for me. But it's like I said, the Kodak Reels is a very adequate box for many people. And like somebody was just asking yesterday on Facebook, he had 60 reels of film to do. If he were to go out and spend, $25 a reel to have somebody do it for himself times 60 reels, that's a bunch of money. But if he goes and buys one of these reels units for $350, does his 60 reels, and he resells it for $250 used, his cost per reel gets drastically reduced. So, it's all a matter of what makes sense to you. Like I said, if I had, gotten a heck of a trade-in on my last scanner, I wouldn't. I agonized over this thing for about 3 years, and I finally said, "What the hell? I'll just do it." So, but yeah, it's fun. Like I said, it took a lot of getting used to. The hardest thing, the scanner itself is one thing. It's the software after which becomes the challenge. Like I mentioned before, you can run it through the program, correct colors, stabilize it, trim it down. Like I said, that movie where we just the last one we saw where the gondolas came by, that was several different exposures of the same film, because the gondola all of a sudden went into dark shadows and was invisible. So I had to take that one shot. And what's nice, because it's a frame by frame scanner, it takes every single frame as a still picture, and then it combines it into a movie. But I can still edit it frame by frame. So if I have something where something is crossing from dark into light, I can say, okay, up to this very individual frame here, I'll take number 1. Now I can start taking take number 2. And what I can also do is say, let me blend in between take number 1 and take scene number 5 and average it over. So it starts fading between the 2 exposures, and you don't see a sudden sharp, line as it goes. So you can do all sorts of, little tricks or, things like that with a frame by frame scanner. The Kodak Reels is not a frame by frame. It generates I think it's an MP4 file, all on its own, but very, very heavily compressed. With a frame by frame scanner, you can grab one particular frame, blow it up, move it, rotate it. You can do all sorts of, of nonsense on it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Well, I hope people enjoyed a trip back to Expo 67. Like I said, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the event, and I have the next movie that I'm doing right now. I had shown back in November or so of last year. It was done on the old scanner, and I'm sitting there going through the new scanner. The old scanner was 720p, and this one is 2000 2K resolution. And I'm just comparing the two of them and going, wow, But the trouble is, the guy that did it, he did a really nice job, but he did a lot of splices on it, and he was a very good photographer and a terrible splicer. So he literally will have one piece of film and just a milliliter of space between the next section of film. So when you run it through, it goes through and flash, sort of thing. And you can see all his splice marks and everything. So I have to go through that. And that's what I did on each of these films you saw here. Like the last one I did, the color, not the Ansel run, but the other one. The guy's camera, every time he stopped the camera, the last frame would blur. And then there'd be a flash of the next frame as the electric eye in his camera adjusted to the light. So every single time you saw in that film a sequence of going from one thing to the next thing, I had to take out 3 or 4 frames for every one of those scene changes. Again, I could leave it there. I just find it distracting. I'm watching it, flashing. So, I just take them out. And so, a particular thing like that's a 20-minute movie probably takes 6 hours or something to take out the splices. But, I figure if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to do it as right as I can. So it's great fun.
Was there a special filter on there that you could flip on and off for Ansochrome film?
No, I tell you, the Ansochrome, when I had the boxes and I was really excited. And when I put the first reel on, I looked at it and it was like, oh crap, and each of the boxes were labeled Expo 1, Expo 2, Expo 3, Expo 4. Well, and they meant their Expo trip, not Expo. So literally, in the first one, you got 4 minutes of very overexposed purple film of people driving in a car and the kid staring at the camera because he doesn't want to be photographed. So, but it was really very purple. So I used, like I said, the program allows color correction, but I had to turn it all the way up to max and run it through it. And it came out slightly less purple. Then I had to go through and try to do it again, correcting for white balance, saying, okay, I know that the tents over the, information booths at Expo 67 were white. So if I can try to take those from purple down to white, do that and run it through there again with that setting, it like I said, it looks like crap today, but the real thing, it all looked like basically Randy's shirt. I mean, it was really that sort of, that sort of color throughout. And, sometimes you can restore them. Like I restored a film I think I showed a couple weeks ago, one of the souvenir films from Walt Disney World. A friend of mine had scanned. I was able to bring back the colors, but he had 2 of them scanned, and one of them I can't bring back the colors. It's still staying red no matter what I do. So, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. I never give up. I keep them in my to-do pile, and what I do is I like when I'm doing the color stuff, I'll just tell it to run. The one I went on last night ran for 8 hours. I just, set it, went in, watched TV with Carol, went to bed, came up this morning, it finally finished. So I just let it, because it takes frame by frame by frame. It takes a frame, color adjust it, takes a frame, color adjust it, takes a
Yeah.
frame. Well, when you've got 60,000 frames in a movie, that's a lot of color adjustment, and it takes a long time, even on a pretty powerful computer. But I can just let it run in the background, or I'll go out for the day, just let it sitting there doing what it needs to do. And
Yeah.
it's the editing that's a pain in the butt. If there was an automatic take out I'm sure you could probably write some macro. Every time you see a bright flash, take out the 2 frames before and the 2 frames after, but I have not perfected that yet.
Well, I was going to say, I presume the software has an option for you to write your own filters and save some parameters that maybe that are part of theirs that you can tweak and then save as your own.
Yeah, I tell you, some of the software I use does have that capability, Baron, but I found writing nuclear missile launching codes easier than I find trying to address some of their software. The difference is these people write this stuff and then they just assume you understand it and they don't bother to document it. So it's like, oh, just you can put a hook in at this point of the program to do that. Okay, I know I can put a hook in. How exactly do I do that? So crazy. Oh, before we go, Beth, you recently took a tour to a mine. Any chance you would like to show us that on a future week?
Yeah, I don't have very many pictures, but I can show those. It was pretty interesting. It's in Dahlonega, Georgia, and Dahlonega had a gold rush in the 1820s. So it was one of the earlier gold rushes in the country. There was an earlier one in right around 1799 or 1800 in North Carolina at Reed's Gold Mine, but then Dahlonega was in the 1820s. So this was not a mine quite from that period. This one was from the 1890s. But it was interesting to go down there and see some of the old equipment. And, it's interesting because you're down in these big caverns and going through these tunnels, and none of them are natural caverns. They were all created by dynamite blasts. So they showed how they would set the dynamite, and, it was interesting. We enjoyed it.
Yeah, what Caroline mine, Blano Festiniog over in Wales a number of years ago, and you're in a room that's the size of a football stadium, and you realize that was all done with people with pickaxes and shovels and that. So when I saw your picture of going down that one real narrow tunnel into the center, and you're thinking, my God, I think my job is hard sometimes. All that had to be done. Even if you use dynamite, you still got to haul it back out of there and everything. So it's just kind of fascinating.
Right. It was interesting.
Yeah, so if I maybe find a week that we can do, 10 minutes of this and 10 minutes of that. Each of you guys, gals, have probably gone someplace fun and exciting that the rest of us would all like to see. So we'll see if we can put together a viewer's choice sort of thing. So again, thanks for joining. I hope everybody has a great Saturday. And I don't know what we'll be looking at next Saturday, but we'll see if we can. I keep threatening to do the Amazing Carol's baby pictures, but
Probably get good attendance for that one.
She's giving you the look, Bill.
What's that?
She's giving you the look.
No. A friend of mine just sent me a video yesterday that Carol hasn't seen yet of when we moved from our condo to our house here, and how we were transporting everything over, including the brand new baby. And then it goes up through Margot's first year birthday party. And as I wrote back to him, I said, that's really great. I enjoyed the video, but who are all those young people? Things change so much. Well, have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you later. And if you're here in California, don't forget to vote. So we'll talk to you later.
Done.
Thanks again, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Good weekend.
Bye.